Beaten by a Benigno 3 of the 4. I should have a shirt made.
Think that I'm a loser, 'cause now my panel too low. Think that I'm a flop, 'cause I got hold of my shoes. Think my cock is like my dirty shirt. Well, you can fuck off, 'cause I'm working 6 a week. You think that life is really tough when they tell you won't buy you a brand new car. Take a girl out, she won't fuck you. You just bought her grandma coat. Spend all your money on shit.
Okay, welcome to the Juiceless Podcast. This is a podcast that'll focus on the Juiceless Fantasy Baseball League. And just 4 owners out of the 10 total getting together. So we have Jack, Greg, Joe, and myself, Tim. And we're going to be talking about and chronicling what happens with this league. This is a neat fantasy league. It's been around for about 8 years. There's actually some deeper, richer history to this league. But hopefully you'll find some of this entertaining. I think that some of the subjects will go beyond just fantasy baseball. A little about Juiceless. The Juiceless League is a dynasty league. So everybody that is on a team now is actually on that team from a dynasty perspective forever. There are no contracts. We do have minor leagues where we can farm talent. This is a pretty libertarian league too. We try to have as few rules as possible and leave it up to the owners to make the fun happen. Another thing is we don't have individual pitchers. We do pitching staffs. And the pitching staffs are the only thing that isn't dynasty in this dynasty league. The pitching staffs are drafted every year in reverse order to standings. So the worst team picks first, and the second worst team picks second, and so on and so forth. There's also a secondary market in pitching staffs as well. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Have no idea where it's going to go or what's going to happen, or if it's going to be entertaining. I think the only rule that the 4 of us are going to be looking at is it entertaining to us? So if you like it, great. If you don't, doesn't really matter. You don't have to listen to it. Anyway, what we're going to do today is we're going to be doing some previews of teams for the upcoming season. One of the things that Jack and I have done for many, many years is go through the teams and try to get a preseason sense of who is doing what and what team is doing what and how successful we think that can be. So that's where I think it's the best place to start the Juiceless Podcast. Enjoy. So the Dreamers, this is an interesting team. It's by 2 owners that they've been in the league. They've owned the Dreamers for, Jack, is this their 3rd season?
Going into the 3rd, yeah.
Their 3rd season, and it's a pretty interesting and exciting team when you kind of take a look at what they've built and who they have on that. So, Jack, what's your take on the Dreamers? What are you thinking?
They have hit on quite a few. I mean, hit or traded again for a 2-year team. If you take a lot of the guys that they're starting right now, and that the rest of us, should have some fear against, take them back to 3 years ago, the year prior to them joining the league, and there'd be no fear whatsoever. So Sanchez, obviously, extremely strong at the moment at catcher. Freeman had a great year last year. I don't think he's done improving. Donaldson obviously can. No need for improvement there. Seager, again, another young, absolute stud. Again, we haven't seen the best of him for a while. Story's an interesting one, but I'm a believer. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Cargo, obviously, has some Kool-Aid of his own the last couple of years. So if he keeps that stuff, then Kiermaier, one of the most underrated guys in fantasy sports. Yelich, I love Yelich this year. Huge on Yelich this year, and Belt's another interesting one. I haven't paid that much attention to the guy, and all of a sudden I see him popping up on on a whole lot of lists this year. He's got a strong bench. He's got Santana. Um, a couple question marks, but yeah, Mets staff. He's got the Rays as a backup. I'm not walking into that one too confidently.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Jack said. I think clearly if we're going to see a little bit more whether Sanchez is for real or how he's going to hold up to a full season. I'm kind of looking forward to that. And the team seems to have more depth than he's had in the past. If somebody goes down, it's not necessarily going to kill his season. Having the Mets staff is going to help tremendously.
Yeah, the Mets could be a 1 and could be a 7, 8.
Yep. You just don't know.
I think what's really fascinating about this team is, when you look at your team and you build it, you always are striving to have 3 or 4 players that, you can really count on and predict what they're going to do and be successful with them. Whereas this team, if you look at their roster, and to your point, Jack, the recent history of these players, it's really Pedroia and Donaldson, who, if I were the owner of this team, I would say, you know what, barring an injury, I can pencil these guys in for pretty much their historic rate stats. But, looking at the prospects and the young players on this roster, where we're all usually hoping that we get 50% of our prospect calls right, the brief history on these players suggests that they've just picked extremely well, and they've honed in on young players who have huge upsides. There's really nobody on this roster who, the early returns you can say are an abject bust. Peterson and Puig would be the closest to those, but they still have been productive, even though they've been maybe not lived up to their hype. But every other player, Sanchez, Story, Seager, JD Martinez, Yelich, they're all really exceeding what you could most, wildest dreams hope for production.
Hit on a lot of these players, right? So Story has to repeat it and do it for entire season. I think Joe talked about Sanchez, the kid's young. Freddie Freeman had a half of power last year, and Freddie Freeman he's not a spring chicken, right? I mean, he's how old is he? 28, 29? Oh, he's only 27.
Yeah. I was gonna say he seems like he's been playing for 10 years and he's only 27.
Yeah, he's not gonna have a hell of a strong lineup around him. I too like Yelich. I think Yelich is.
Nor did he last year, and 43 doubles, 34 home runs. I mean, not to mention the 6 triples. I think he's about to become a force to be reckoned with, honestly.
Freeman, you talking Freeman?
Freeman, yeah.
And some players like that will rise to that when their team's only good hitter. They'll often overperform.
So
somebody gets smart enough to pitch around them. Yeah.
So is this
exactly.
In your opinion, guys? Is this your predicting for the is this team going to be in the World Series this year?
The World Series?
Yes.
I mean, we'd have to look at the other 7 teams to finalize a prediction, but I would say no. But ask me again in a year.
Yeah, I concur. I'd say no, because I assume that one of these 8 starters is going to get hurt and miss significant time due to injury, and that 1 or 2 of these less than 3 years service time players are going to regress. Maybe not in a terrible way, but they're going to regress. And there are some positions for which he has no depth.
Yeah.
Well, and I would add to that over the course of time, Carlos Gonzalez has kind of proved that he's only good for about half the season because he's not going to do well away from home, and I think that's going to hurt sometimes.
I don't know that guy. I don't, I don't want to talk about Tim while he's on the phone, but that guy. I mean, last year was a drop down again a little bit and pretty solid, but 40 home runs 2 years ago, 42 home runs last year. I will say that may be the first. Yep, I believe that's the first 2 years in a row that he's played 150 games, which Tim and I know what that means.
That means trade him, which is exactly what I did. So I'm just playing the odds there, and trying to get some value out of him while I still could. So
And he has been passed around quite a bit too.
He's no Charles Johnson. So let's move on to LJ's team, the Funkin' Punks. I played LJ last year in the playoffs, and he's got the team. When I instantly look at the team, I don't see the star power that I see in some of the other teams, but it gets it done, and it continues to get it done. And I always feel like LJ's not even paying attention, but he's definitely paying attention, and he puts together a winning team year after year after year. So Jack, as you go down through the team, what are you thinking?
He just checking in the bench and all. He this one's not going to make the World Series either, in my opinion. But he's sneaky good, and he's had a few guys, and he's not as deep of an owner as some of us, in my opinion. So he kind of needs this sometimes, but he's hit it. He needs a few guys to essentially come out of nowhere, like again, Kyle Seager a few years ago was not highly sought after. Sal Perez has become a stud as well. Votto helps, obviously. One of the better first basemen you can have in fantasy. Kinsler's solid. Not getting any younger, but solid. Lindor was a good pick of his. I think he grabbed him and has had him since the draft. Braun, I guess, is good again. Granderson's interesting again. LJ's not young, much older team than the Dreamers. Adam Jones, I was offered Adam Jones quite a few times in another league, and I'm not buying right now, but I've been wrong before. Not a whole lot of fear of the bench. I mean, they'll keep spots for you, but he's got a couple solid minor league guys.
I think the worst thing that he's got going against him to even make the playoffs is the division that he's in.
Division.
Yeah,
There's only going to be two people in that division that are going to make it out of there.
So that's a good that's a good point. So the divisions, how we have the league division set up is that we have the 4 playoff teams from the previous year in one division. We call the Champions Division, and then we have 2 other 3-team divisions, and it's set up to try to really bring more parity into the league and give teams that didn't make the playoffs a slightly easier road to the playoffs. I think that's what you're talking to directly, right, Joe? That he's in the Champions.
That is correct, because I'm looking at 3 faces, and one of you is not going to make the playoffs.
Well, I look at this team and I think that there's certainly no holes there, but it's like a team that's built to compete year after year, but there's not that high ceiling on any of these players. Like none of these players I look at and think, oh man, this person has the potential to really take it to the next level, and if that happens, that's going to be a team I don't want to face. These are all pretty known quantities at this point, kind of the opposite of the Dreamers. And so as I look at this lineup, if they're healthy, I don't really look forward to playing these guys. But I also don't think that there's a high ceiling there, but neither is there a low floor, you know?
Well, and you could also say that several of those players are reaching a point in their career where they're going to start regressing sooner rather than later.
For sure. Oh, look at that. As I look on this our app, guys, a trade has just been made official in real time here on our.
We've been talking about that one for a while. That's
I'm
Oh, look
drinking.
at that.
I'm making the run. I'm gonna
Breaking news.
I'm gonna regret it. I absolutely know it. There's times that I think I may regret trades. There's times I know I will. This is but
Well, should we be brutal and do a little instant analysis here on the podcast?
absolutely.
So Jack acquires Evan Gaddis, Houston Astros, for, is it Francisco Burrito? Oakland? Is that his first name? Francisco? Or Franklin Burrito?
Well, this says Franklin, yeah.
Oh yeah, Franklin Burrito. I'm on my app. Yeah, well, I gotta, sorry, Jack, I gotta give this one to Tim. My instant analysis is that Tim's the winner of this trade.
There's no doubt. Like I said, I'm already aware of that, and I was aware of it when I did it. So
yes, but I also know how much you value catching.
Yeah, long term, and there are some. It's a first step of a path of many. So there's going to be some other things that build off of this. So I'm not done, but long
Translation: You're trading him to Pops in 10 minutes.
Evan Gaddis, while he's been known to boost a season, he'll never be as good as Brett. I mean, Bretter's going to be an absolute stud. So I'm going on record saying that Tim didn't rob me this time. This time.
You heard it here first.
It was consensual.
So
this time I asked for the robbing, and I'm very aware and in full sound mind and body when I've done it.
So this is when Jack and I owned a team together. We had trouble. We're both alphas. We had real trouble kind of seeding control, and secondly, Jack has the ability to continually build, where I tend to kind of build the farm system up, let those players develop, benefit from that, and then rebuild. So very different kind of approaches. And if you can trade, and as you're effective, you can trade well enough to continue that, which is what Jack does, then you can have success. And yeah, I think it's funny because Jack, he's always got 2 or 3 trades going. I was on the phone with him 2 weeks ago. He was totally buttering me up, making me feel like I was the most important person in the world. And I, like you, Greg, came across my phone while I'm talking to him. And
about Gaddis.
He traded with the Dreamers, and instantly I went from the prettiest girl at the ball to the ugliest girl at the ball. I mean, he got off the phone faster than that's not true. You didn't get off the phone, but you definitely did stop talking, and you stopped with the compliments pretty damn quick. So
yeah, it was a Gaddis trade, and the trade that came across got me Russell Martin. So I said, Tim, I really need a catcher. Beep. And I just got one, so I guess we'll talk later.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. I'm very excited. But with Jonathan Lucroy as my only catcher now, I'm really exposed. But we'll see that when we get to my team. I'm very, very exposed. Okay, so Funk and Punks. So let's go down to Lethal Injection. And so Mikey's team, Lethal Injection. This I don't know between Greg and Mikey who is more snake bit in this league, with just, bad luck, injuries at the wrong time, ties, whatever, that happened. So, and Mikey's team, man, talk about some star power. So Jack, what do you think as you go through Mikey's team on a player by player basis?
He's always been solid. If anything, he'll sometimes back in the Mikey's an original, and back in the day, it was almost more fun for us to pick a guy that wasn't supposed to be good, have him do well, than it was to win. Like it was like bragging rights on, see, I saw that coming, guy, and the sleepers, if you will. And so sometimes, not all the time, and he's a very smart dude. Mikey sits in front of baseball and Sports Center and baseball at night as much as anyone. But sometimes he'll reach just a little bit too much, and that, in my opinion, will hold him back. McCann is solid. Not the greatest catcher out there, but few are. Obviously, Rizzo. I miss that guy. I just did not believe in him, and whoops.
He was a punk in San Diego, wasn't he? I mean, he was a Red Sox, and then he got traded to San Diego, and I just thought he was another,
I didn't see it.
No.
Bryant, obviously a stud, barring a falling into a really deep hole. He has his weakness, if anything, is middle infield. And what's interesting is he's got Tulo and Segura. The Segura in Seattle. So Segura, obviously, we've seen the best of Segura. We've seen the worst of Segura. So I guess it depends on which part of the spectrum he ends up landing. Tulo, obviously strong when he can play, but we can't pencil him in for a full season by any means. Nelson Cruz is strong. Man, that guy's strong. I hate him. I don't like him. There's nothing about him. I'd never even want him on a team. I don't know what it is. There's just guys like that for me. He's one of them. Chris Davis, again, if you're going to have somebody that hits like Bob Uecker, have him hit like Bob Uecker over the fence. I don't know that I'd want him, but I guess the number's there. Kemp's a little aged. Davis a little aged. Mikey could easily fall off the cliff this year, or kick everyone's ass. But he's got Nunez on his bench, and shortstop and third. So I could easily see Nunez in his middle infield. Zobrist is an interesting one because he's always been a dependable stud at second base. But now they got the kid coming in, and the way he's been playing in the the WBC and the way they talk about him, respect him. Baez, it looks like he's got to be starting at second base soon. So then, what do you do with Ben? You got.
He'll get traded somewhere and be good for them.
Maybe, yeah, he's going to end up having to be somewhere else because me personally, as hard as it would be to sit down a guy that you're paying, I don't know, whatever, $7 million every time he puts on a glove, but Hayward is that guy. He makes me sad when I see him bat, Jason Hayward. He's just not good.
So Jack, though, isn't Tulo now at his age and away from Coors Field? Isn't he just Zach Cozart in disguise? No.
Almost, and with glass bones, almost. I mean, he's not. But like I said, you get a Zobrist playing every day, and Nunez does what he did last year, and that's a pretty strong middle infield. So just because he has those guys on his bench, the Zobrist thing though, I've had Zobrist offered to me, and I'm staying away because, again, you got Schwarber out there. You got there's nowhere for this kid to play.
But that's what I like about his team though. Is like Zobrist, Chris Bryant, and Nunez all have two premium positions that they can play and are likely to play every day. I place a premium on that personally
Oh, I agree.
because that you can slide guys in and around.
I agree. That's a big deal. In fact, in one of my in my other league, I actually have Trey Turner in this league. In my other league, I actually traded a deal with gave him Altuve and I got quite a bit back. But just because of that, to be able to move that guy back and forth is huge.
Yeah.
Usually that only lasts for a season, and the guy settles into where he's going. But in Zobrist's case, for sure, that guy constantly, he's if I'm correct, in the past he's qualified at 2 or 3 positions at a time. So that's a huge deal if the guy is playing every day and going to be able to contribute.
Well, it seems like Madden loves Zobrist, and it seems like if there's somebody who's going to sit, it's not going to be Zobrist. At least not yet. I mean, unless he has some sort of a decline, Madden seems to love this guy.
You gonna sit Schwarber?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, they're under the guise of his knees a little bit gimpy, or they'll give him some at bats at behind the plate. They'll give him at bats when they're playing interleague, But I think Bryant and Zobrist are out there every day, and Baez and Schwarber are the odd men out, and they're gonna have to fight for playing time.
Well, and Zobrist, he can play anywhere on the field. He's sort of like Brock Holt in that way. He's going to get his at bats just resting other people.
But the other guys don't. Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant ain't going nowhere. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's right.
I'm sure of that.
Only so many spots for him to play. Addison Russell, and he's not a shortstop.
Well, it's going to be those 4 guys between second, third, and left. It'll be Schwarber, Bryant, Baez, and Zobrist. And it'll be some combination of those 4, I think, with Bryant and Zobrist getting the preferential treatment.
Really, you think Zobrist is going to end up with more time than Baez?
Yeah, for sure. I do. I think that Baez, Baez, I like Baez, but he strikes out too much. He's a great fielder. I think he'll be a defensive replacement. But I think it'll be Zobrist or Bryant at second or third, and the other one in the left with some spot action for Schwarber and Baez. I mean, Zobrist could start to decline. What is he, 34, 35?
Yeah.
But assuming last year's performance at or about that, I think that's what Madden's going to do. But we'll see.
Has he got every Chris Davis?
Yeah.
Are there any he's missing?
The C, the K. I would if I was Joe Madden, I might just hit Jason Hayward in the knee with a baseball bat, and there opens up a position.
You'd have him pull a Nancy Kerrigan?
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to good discussion, fellas.
First of all, doesn't he deserve it?
Well, I think defensive metrics are more and more playing into at the professional level, and I think Hayward is pretty damn good in the outfield. And when you think about runs prevented, it's kind of the other component that we don't really look at on a fantasy level. In fact, I actually think it'd be kind of cool if the metrics got to a point that we could then add defensive metrics, that your player pool would shift in some cases dramatically, and Hayward would be someone that might be a top 15 player if you could look at the whole package. And I think that the more the metrics come down to the common people like us, we can already see hit tracker information. We have all these kinds of things that I don't just like. Starting to get defensive players in fantasy football, I think you start to add defensive metrics in baseball, and suddenly you've got some really interesting differences that you could play with. And frankly, I think that would help the league be even more popular, because as much as I love baseball and as much as I've followed baseball, playing fantasy baseball has made me a far more committed fan of the game overall.
Oh yeah.
So for me, the adding defensive metrics would be something that I think would be fascinating. But that's probably after Haywood is retired and he can,
Well, don't sell Hayward short. I have a deep scouting department in Arizona who tells me that Hayward supposedly spent the summer in Arizona or the winter in Arizona preparing and working and consciously making an effort to raise his power game. So I took him on a flyer in the 4th round to be some injury depth for me, but I'm secretly hoping that in Wrigley he can knock out 20 home runs this year.
Was Benigno trolling you? Was he just totally like throwing shade your way? I forgot that you even drafted him.
Yeah, we'll see.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So moving on to the omission commission, the omission commission, and that is a hop bud on his as his team symbol. Scott Hill loves his beer. Actually, only drinks beer from Oregon. He is definitely a beer connoisseur. So, Jack, why don't you take us through through his team as you see it? This is an interesting team to me.
So this Scott didn't Scott make the playoffs? Not this past year, but the prior year, right?
His second year in the league, correct?
Yeah. So he's got Real Muto is as solid as you can get if you don't have one of the other guys. I like him. I do. Matter of fact, he got drafted last year at the beginning of the year, and I, for some reason, thought I was going to sneak him past all you guys, so I kept waiting and waiting. And I had LaCroix at the time. No, I didn't. Maybe I didn't. And I waited and waited, and he took him right before I did, and I was pissed off. I like Real Muto. Again, he's not going to win you a championship, but he's not going to lose you a lot of games at catcher, and not a lot of people can say that.
He's going to steal some bases too.
Yeah. Greg Bird, I guess we'll see. Don't they have like 12 first basemen down there right now, or?
He is starting. Greg Bird has actually won the job over Chris Carter.
Well, that should be interesting. That he could be very good. Dozier, what he hit like 72 home runs last year. That guy's interesting. He's when he started out in the league, he was valued very, very high because of the steals.
Yep.
And a la Barry Bonds. Somebody test this kid. He all of a sudden now he's a power stud. So that's interesting. That's just I think it was 42 actually. 42. Which is his career high. He has gone up every year. I don't know. I was how old is he? 29. Man, I got offered him in a couple of deals, and I just stayed away from it. Now I'm kind of regretting it. Yeah, Dozier could be the best, one of the best for sure. Altuve would argue, but Frazier was one of his first picks in the expansion draft, and has treated him very, very well. Alex Bregman qualifies at shortstop. By the way, I love Alex Bregman this year. I think he is Alex Bregman is the next Donaldson. Love. Everybody loves this Benedetti kid, huh? Tim, talk about Benedetti kid a little bit.
He is a stud through and through. I mean, he came out of college, and he does have rugged good looks for sure. He's got a hell of a lock of hair on his head, hell of a hairdo. And look, the guy's got power. He's got speed. He plays freaking phenomenal defense, and he's got some speed. He's not going to steal a lot of bases, but he could poke 25 home runs easily. And he's a small guy, but he has a very powerful stroke, and he's got a great eye. He knows how to work counts, and he may regress a bit this year. He had when he came up last year, he did really well, battled through some injury, but guy's a stud, and I actually traded him to Scott and was sad about doing it. I can't even remember what I got in return. That's how much I really like him.
I look at this roster, and I got to be honest. This is going to sound harsh, but I'm just going to put it out there. This roster depresses me. This roster reminds me of all of my Pirates teams that I suffered through for 20 years, that had mostly mid-level prospects who had exceeded expectations to their credit and were serviceable players, and a few really high-end prospects for whom all the weight of the world is going to be put on the shoulders of these high-end prospects in the hopes that they live up immediately and carry the team. But Grichuk and Cole Calhoun and Eaton and Simeon and Shaw and Bird, all these mid-level prospects. I'm sorry to the Omission Commission, but this is a roster that is giving me a little bit of a cognitive dissonance from my recent 20-year run of futility with the Pirates.
Long term, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I will say that most of those guys you mentioned are on his bench. If Greg Bird, does what he could do, he is. I'm not a huge fan of Adam Eaton, but if he can just get solid numbers out of him, and I don't know who's his shortstop going to be once we kick out Bregman. Crawford, again, not lighting the world on fire, but he squeezes his way into the playoffs and gets a few good weeks out of Dozier or Frazier. Those guys could easily tear it up. Nobody's even mentioned A.J. Pollock, 40-20 2 years ago. That guy hasn't played since. And where the hell did Justin Turner come from? That guy, I guess, all of a sudden, he's a 30 home run hitter now, too.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Jack. You just validated my point, though. It's all these players who had a really, outlying type of season once or twice, and we've now picked them up, and we're going to put them on the field. And if every freaking card falls into place, we're going to be dangerous. Look out. But those things never happen, unfortunately.
Good point.
So here's why I think this team is interesting, is that this is a team in transition. So we talked about originally he when he went in the expansion draft, he picked a lot of players that were at their peak or past their peak. And I think, and made the playoffs, but realized at that point that he does not have a run in this team, that the team was aging too fast. He did not have the minor leagues. He was looking at, when he was talking about to me, he was looking at your team, Greg. He was looking at some of the other teams, and he knew. And so this is a team that is committed to the process, and that for me is something I love to see. And so he's been pretty active on the trade front, and I think we have probably 6 out of the 10 owners that are really active on the trade front, and Scotty's actually been one of those. So, if he can build around the Bregmans, the Benintendis, the Birds, and maybe Pollock, gets away from his injuries and he continues to be good. You pepper in some other players around. We can go through the draft a little on and see if he picked up anybody good in the draft. He definitely picked up one of the best name players in Chance Sisco, so we can, check that out. But, I think this is a team that, he doesn't expect to make the World Series. He doesn't expect to make the playoffs. At least I hope he doesn't. But I think if he stays committed to the process, he's got a good core that he can build off of and, eventually turn it around. He's got the Cardinals staff. He's probably going to end up trading that if he's smart midseason. He's got some pieces here that he could still probably move for those guys that are making an aggressive run, which, again, I think there's 6 or 7 teams that have a legitimate shot to get into the tournament. So it's an interesting team there. Joe, any comments before we move on to Bad Street?
I think that I think it's kind of middle of the road. There's some exciting stuff. I hope for his sake that Benintendi has a great year, because that'll mean my Red Sox are benefiting from it. It's. I think you guys are pretty well right on. There's probably not a lot of hope to win a World Series title this year.
Watch the battle. Completely out of control.
So let's move over to Bad Street. Mike Sr. Jack, you want to take us through this team here?
I would like to send an ambulance to go pick up Miguel Sano and Javier Baez and get them the hell out of here before this whole team goes to shit. I'm not I love you, Mike. I'm not a big fan of this squad. Derek Norris, no fear. Hanley Ramirez, I personally think that he is overrated at the moment under the circumstance. Put him back at shortstop, maybe we'll talk. Cano getting up there. Longoria, solid. Big year last year, 30-some home runs. I was kind of surprised after I traded him. 36. D. Gordon, I guess we'll see. Last time he played a full season, he was second baseman in fantasy.
Juicing then, though, wasn't he?
What's that?
He was juicing then, wasn't he?
Yeah. But even after he came back, if you look at his stats for the time he came back, they're just on par with what he was doing the prior season. Actually, much shorter span, obviously, but we'll see. I traded for him in the other league because I assumed he was underrated. I don't know that he'll be the second best fantasy, second baseman this year, but I definitely still think he could be, top 5, 6, and I think he's, probably ranked outside the top 10 by some people. Duvall again is a poor man's Adam Dunn. Dexter Fowler, he's an interesting one. He's been obviously doing pretty good. Again, he should maybe be on what's it, Scotty's team. Pretty good, not good, not bad enough to drop, not quite good enough to get excited about starting. But again, moving over to St. Louis should be interesting. I don't see it being better, but we'll see. I do like Miguel. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. And Carlos Beltran is playing in Houston in that lineup and seeing more fastballs than he's probably ever seen in his life. Gonna, compensate for the fact that, he'll probably be dead by mid-season.
Does he still have knees?
I don't know.
I don't know, but Julio Franco recently described him as youthful.
Is that sort of like saying he's in the best shape of his life in spring training?
Yeah, Julio Franco said, "Man, I wish I had the spring in the step that Carlos Beltran had. I'd still be playing."
Well, maybe he literally had his knees replaced with springs.
Maybe.
No fear of his bench whatsoever. Adrian Gonzalez obviously has the capabilities of hitting some dingers. I love Baez long term. If I could get him, I would. For long term. I do expect Baez to end up with more at bats than Zobrist, but not by a lot. But I do expect it.
I was the one who traded Pops Baez this offseason. I love Baez's potential and his youth, but he just strikes out too much, I think.
He does. And yeah, Mike's dad has always had he's always had the most of something. So none of his guys are complete usually, i.e. Billy Hamilton. Yes, he's going to win the steals, and then of course Mike's dad just likes home runs. So whether they bat 220 or 320, he doesn't really care as long as they hit 40 bombs. I expect to see Carter on here, but I guess not.
Carter.
Clint Frazier. That guy's been moved around a few times for a minor leaguer.
Ginger power, baby. Ginger power.
Ginger power.
I will say this: every time I look at Pop's team, I don't think there's anything there, and every once in a while, they'll put it all together and they'll have a decent season. So I'm kind of in agreement with Jack. I don't see a whole lot there that I would want, but you just never know.
Well, the best thing about Pops is that he loves the trade game, and he's constantly active in the trade game. And
so, Jack, you probably could get Baez.
Yeah, and the other thing is that his minors are he's got with Frazier, Manayak, O'Neill, Tyler O'Neill, Mickey Manayak. He's got some good players there. Gurriel, I think, is going to play first base for Houston. I think Houston's going to be an offensive juggernaut this year, and I think if he massages his game a little bit there,
he's going to bat 7. But I agree. I mean that guy batting 7th is scary lineup.
That is, and Cano, but I mean, guys, Cano was an elite player last year.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, and I take a look at this. Longoria is another one. If Cano and Longoria stay healthy, Ramirez has another year at first base. The outfield just, Fowler, Duvall, and Beltran just don't excite me at all. Sano, I absolutely agree. Sano at third base, Sano would be even better.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at Reardon Metal. Jack, you want to take a quick run through here?
Wilson Contreras, again, he's a catcher, which, again, is becoming, more and more, he's a catcher. Again, you got the, couple of guys that can separate themselves. Other than that, I don't, anywhere from 3 to 10, who the hell knows? I love Will Myers. Will Myers, the kind of guy that again, they come in strong. He was a high prospect, what seems like 10 years ago, and the guy's, still in his low 20s. Didn't perform right away as well as expected when he goes from Tampa Kansas City, Tampa, and before last season, Will Myers stated that he would hit 2020 last year and has never done anything close to that. And Will Myers hit 28 last year. So, Joe, I think you'll be happy to hear, if you haven't already, that this spring Will Myers says that he is going to go for 40-40.
Let's just hope he plays 150 something games.
I I love Will Myers. I love him.
He doesn't wear batting gloves, and which is freaking awesome to see. And Joe will not trade him for anything. Like all off season, I tried to get Will Myers, and Joe was always very polite, and he's always kind, but as kind as a stiff arm can be. So clearly,
well, he's become much more valuable to me now that he's at first base instead of the outfield.
Jesus,
Which is odd. Usually, generally, it's the opposite in fantasy, but it's all about your team. The same situation. We'll get to
right
in it.
Dude, all these first four players, I mean, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to step on your words there, Jack. I'll let you.
Yeah. Myers, Altuve, Machado, Carrera. It's the was it the World Baseball Championship? It's, those four. I mean, as far as I don't know if anybody has a better infield.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, you got three of the absolute elite players with Altuve, Machado, and Correa, and four of the elite with Trout, and then you have two of the former elite players who are still operating at a high level with Pujols and McCutchen, and I think Kutch is going to come back.
I certainly hope so.
I think he will. Yeah, I definitely think he will. I think the move to right will be a good thing for him ultimately.
I think so too.
So that's two today. I do not. I think McCutchen's on his way down. I think we've seen the best of him, but again, we'll see.
I think he's going to be motivated by that contract situation. He's got another year. He's going to start playing for either to be traded to a contender or for his next contract. I think he has 3 or 4 more really solid seasons.
I don't think his hit tool is going anywhere. I think where he's going to lose his value is in his speed and stealing bases and stretching doubles into triples and things like that.
Yep. Still, again, I'd take him. Not a big fan of Herrera. I don't know who else you have down there that you could switch out. That would be your weak spot, in my opinion. But again, with the rest of the squad like that, you could probably afford to carry a weak spot. You're not in the 14 division, correct?
That would be correct.
Oh, that's right. It's you, Scott, and who else? Scott.
Let's see. It's me, Scott, and Eldon, and
okay, the Dreamers. Yeah,
that's going to be a fun division to watch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Who'd you end up with pitching, Joe?
That's good. The Nationals.
And the Dreamers have the Mets. So you have.
Look at this. Look at. I mean, this guy's Zimmer and.
Yeah. So let me just. I mean, I love the minor systems, right? Tapia, Taveras, Zimmer, Robles, Diaz, Raul Mondesi Jr. These are Swihart. These are fucking stud prospects.
I agree.
Tapia obviously is up there. Robles is in the top 10 in almost every prospect ranking that you can find. This guy is, he could play outfield on top of water is what I'm hearing. So, I think Joe's team is set up where if he needs to go out and get that outfielder to complement Trout, he could move a player or two and have his pick of teams that know that they're out of it. He could probably go get a Pollock.
Right. Yeah, his bench could be stronger, but again, it's not like he's playing a bunch of guys that are 40 years old either. So
Except for Chew.
Joe scares me. Joe's always scared. Yeah, Chew. Yeah, Joe's Joe scared me on a year by year basis. So it used to be just Joe and Tim, and now Greg has moved up there along with these other two guys. It's becoming an awesome league.
It is.
That's exactly how we wrote it up, right, Jack?
Yep.
So, all right, let's take a look at 47 Ronin. This is my team. So, Jack.
Um, so there's some pain for me to look at Tim's team, but LaCroix, obviously, if I guess not everybody agrees, but if you don't have Posey, you want LaCroix. I like him again this year. I think he's solid. I think he's in a solid spot, solid lineup. That lineup's coming up. Edwin Encarnacion. I'm just hoping that he just doesn't like Cleveland. I don't know.
Well, that's why I traded him to Tim. I have to confess now that the deal is done, is I really think, having lived in Ohio briefly, that Ohio has a really crippling effect on anybody for a lot of different reasons.
In sports.
So I think we're going to see. Yeah, absolutely. I hate it. That was probably the worst year of my life living in Ohio, and I think we're going to see Edwin revert to his Cincinnati Reds form. If you remember that, people don't even remember that, but I think that's the Edwin Encarnacion,
which was solid.
It's going to be because of age and Ohio.
Yeah, that guy took a huge, huge jump. The only guy I can remember, for an established player, for something, he had played in Cincinnati for a little while, and he wasn't a bad player. But then, a couple of years later, we're comparing him to Miguel Cabrera and Paul Goldschmidt. David Ortiz was the last guy that I remember. Again, see him play part-time in Minnesota. And then next thing you know, he was in Boston doing whatever he did for however long he did it.
Winning championships.
Nolan Arenado, can't do any better. Addison Russell and Xander Bogaerts. If it's not this year, it should be soon. But that may be the best middle infield in fantasy. I love Addison Russell. He keeps doing things to not make me love him more, and maybe I just want him to be that good. But I like him a lot.
Isn't there part of you that wonders about these young Cubs players, though, whether they're going to have any sort of hangover from what they did last year?
For sure. I think that's possible, of course.
Yeah, they did a huge thing. They got a huge monkey off of City's back, and everybody's telling them how great they are. I just wonder how much work they put in.
Not to them, they're a bunch of 22-year-olds. They played baseball their whole lives. They kicked it.
I get it, but I just wonder how much work they put in.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, yeah, it's not a horrible question. Outfield, come on. Mookie Betts, who I got and then traded back to Tim within the same hour, and
wow,
yeah. Charlie Blackmon, Tim just picked up here recently again. Gave a lot for him, no doubt about it. Gave quite a bit for him actually, but one of the things that we shared, Tim and I, long time ago was, sometimes when you're that close, when it's right there, when it's on the line, and you think you got a shot, and you have the ability to do so, then sometimes you just give too much to get that one guy that you need, that you think will put it together, so on and so forth. So as soon as I seen that trade across, that's what I thought. I thought he gave too much, and at the same time, I understood it, completely. In fact, I had a conversation with someone else from the league, and his opinion was that Tim had given too much. Um, in fact, I think there was a comment on the site from one of the members of the league saying, "Hey, you want to help rebuild my team too?"
You got to trade, buddy. You got to trade to make it happen.
You do. So the other two guys, whatever, Bryce Harper, Giancarlo Stanton, blah. Um, two of the best players in baseball. Tim is the team I'm probably scared the most of once again this year, for obviously good reason for those of us who have actually followed the league the last couple of years. Um,
But I'm
he's
really
got,
exposed. I've got no bench. I've got other than Drury. I am super exposed. I've got a 34-year-old first baseman switching teams, moving from a dome to a very cold climate, and
who, who's I can't see. Move your minors. Scroll up a little bit.
Encarnacion.
Oh yeah. No, I'm just checking. Go ahead.
yeah. So I have Cody Bellinger and AJ Reed. They're both in the minors, and I don't have any first baseman. I have Drury is a backup third baseman for me. I believe, and he's starting at second base this year. So I should.
And by the way, I don't know if you remember this or not. We were talking about this. Um, we actually named it the Jose Canseco rule. Um, as long if he's slated to start at second base to start the season, not that you need to use him at second base with the other guys you got, but if he started or slated to start with the Arizona Diamondbacks at second base, then we have qualified him at second base to start the season.
Oh,
I know he already qualifies at outfield and third, but it was Canseco had come from a DH only role with one squad and then got traded to where he was going to play outfield, and everybody knew it. I forget who the DH was, but it was obvious he was going to play outfield, and the team said so, and the new team. So we altered our rule at that point just for that particular situation for the 5 games. So, and I don't think it's come up since, quite honestly.
That's cool. Well, it may depending on how Russell is. And so there you go. So, and this is a league that you have to weather the injuries, and so my left flank is exposed.
Have you consolidated too much? You've done a hell of a job consolidating, and those first 9 guys scare everybody in this league. But yeah, you get,
Yeah, that's the only threat I see to Tim's having a really clear path and a strong opportunity. None of us in the league. It's injury.
Injury, and
Which Giants pitching staff do you get? The one where they win everything, or the one where they have a really bad year?
I think they're going to be a good pitching staff.
I don't disagree with you.
I took the Giants over the Mets. The Mets and the Giants were available to me. I did not think that was going to happen, and it really threw me for a loop. And I was prepared. I thought that it would be the Dodgers that would fall to me. That happened to fall much later. Yeah, exactly. So if I get good pitching, and then I just have to really kind of scour the waiver wire for my injury replacements. And that to defend that flank. And hopefully Bellinger will come up and give me some backup at first base. All right, so let's go to the Smokeland Pathetics. Are you going to keep the name, Greg?
Yeah, I think so. Unless some other inspiration grabs me. You know what I mean?
So let's go through this, and then we'll let Greg go through Jack's team, and then we can do a little discussion after that, and then we can kind of wrap up the call. So, Jack, why don't you go through the Smokeland Pathetics?
Again, Posey, the best catcher you could have, in my opinion, in fantasy. The odds of days. Abreu's an interesting cat. Again, he's not going to kill you. He has definitely lost a notch, in my opinion, over the last couple of years. I expect that to continue. I think we may have seen the best of Abreu. Doesn't mean he shouldn't be starting in fantasy baseball, but exactly the opposite for Odor. I expect him to continue to improve, and that guy's a stud.
What a stud, huh? Oh my gosh.
Hell of a right hook too, right?
Yeah, just everything about him, man. His attitude, just how he plays the game, the power he brings to the plate. That guy's great.
I agree. Carpenter, I mean, I used to value him a little bit when he played one or two positions, with the way the positions that he plays, the fact that he can go anywhere on the field, and now hits the living shit out of the ball. That guy's extremely valuable in fantasy baseball. I'd love to have Matt Carpenter on my squad. Um, Diaz, another one I missed. Sneaky little bastard, just was um, became very good. Jackie Bradley Jr. That's an interesting one. Um, Again, you could see it going either way. I could see it going either way. Cespedes, the New York Cespedes, one of the greatest outfielders in baseball, fantasy baseball. Again, as long as he stays healthy. Springer's interesting. Springer is he didn't do anything as much as I expected him to last year, but he did everything well. I expect him to take a big leap this year, if not next. But I'm hoping for this year because I traded for him in my other league. Um, so I like Springer a lot. And again, where's he going to hit? Like in between, like it's.
I think he's batting cleanup, isn't he?
It's first, right? It's going to be him.
Yeah, he let off last year.
Yeah, I think he's leading off again this year, and then what comes after that? I think they have this year set as I heard Bregman once or twice, but I think it's set with Springer, Altuve, Carrera, Beltran.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's gonna be a good lineup.
Yeah. And then it doesn't get, like I said, it's not a big drop off up. You got Bregman, which again, I think Bregman's going to be is he? He's not a rookie, is he still?
He might still qualify, yeah.
Oh, then he's my call for rookie.
You got Gaddis and Gurleski, or Uriel Gurleski. Yeah, it's a helpful lineup.
That's 7. Yeah, absolutely. That lineup could be, and the staff, that would be their weakness to a point. I don't hate them staff wise, but anyway, Mike Napoli, the ageless one. I had in my other league, I had Mike Napoli and Carlos Santana last year, both on my bench, because I had a really solid squad and couldn't get them in. And at one point, I had to drop one of them, and I went back and forth. I had a hard time, and for those of you who have been in fantasy for a while, and maybe even those of you in a few short years, you'll start developing these weird homoerotic attachments to your players. And Mike Napoli and Shane Victorino were on my bench.
The Flying Hawaiian.
Going into the finals, the championship, and I had 2 major injuries going into the championship, and I dropped those 2. And they weren't doing phenomenal that year. It wasn't their greatest years, Napoli or him, but they were all I had, and I dropped them in. And both of them decided to have the best 2 weeks of their entire season and won me the championship. So for that reason, I kept Mike Napoli last year, and I dropped Santana, which ended up Santana was pretty good. But Mike Napoli is the quietest DH first base stud in the game right now, in my opinion. He's better than anybody thinks he is. Wieters in Washington going to be interesting. I've always been a fan of Wieters. He's always given me reasons not to. Hayward, again, I can't think of him or say his name without the paycheck. So I just always, he'll never be as good as they paid him for, even in the field. Um, Nomar, if I love Nomar and Mazzara, and it could be this year. If I bet, I'd say next. But we'll be talking about him in that elite group for years to come, in my opinion. Bell, I don't know that much about. I don't pay attention to Pittsburgh because that's my brother's team, and I just don't like him. But I've heard good things about the guy. Victor Martinez, another Carlos Santana, Mike Napoli, very old, not somebody that you want to depend on a full season for, but absolutely somebody that in the right time, in the right situation, you can plug in and win you a game or even a championship. Beltre, I have never respected. I've been wrong about Adrian Beltre probably more than any other player in Major League Baseball. I've never had respect for that guy. I've never wanted him. I've never had him. I've never wanted to have him until I look at the stats at the beginning of the following season every year. And that guy's a stud. Gregorius, that sucks that he got knocked up. He's not going to be hurt too bad, though, right?
No, well, mid-April,
Yeah.
May maybe.
Again, young guy with 20 home runs last year. Dahl's an interesting cat. That guy comes back and actually gets the chance to claim a spot, which, they're pretty packed out there. But I expect good things. I like a lot having him in a long-term league, in a keeper league. Senzel, another guy I like a lot, keeper-wise. I like all your damn kids. Greg, honestly, in my opinion, up until you joining the league, there was no question that Tim was the absolute stud when it came to prospects. But I believe that you rival him, at you and Joe. And I know Joe's going to say that he puts no effort into it and he doesn't know nearly as much as you guys and so on and so forth. But just year after year, you guys seem to find those damn jewels.
This is a team that, if I look at a team that's built for the long run, right? This is a team that has all the right players in the right spots. The reserves are there. And you look at Beltre and Dahl, who I think Dahl is special. Beltre, again, I'm with you, Jack. I never gave the guy credit. Every single freaking year, he is just phenomenal at third base, and he hasn't stopped. He's 37 years old, I think. I mean, it's crazy, but he's exactly where you want him, right? He's your backup. Maybe you plug him in, he gets hurt, you got somebody else. But this is a gritty team. I too like Mazzara. It was tough to let him go. I only let him go because I went outfield to middle infield with Rogers. But Mazzara could be special. He also could have been figured out, and so he's got to make an adjustment. So it's going to be really interesting to see what that guy was happening. Josh Bell. Josh Bell. Now, did Josh Bell make the team out of
he's their starting first baseman.
Yeah. So, this is a team that is built to put up a lot of points consistently. There's not a lot of streaky players here. Maybe with the exception of Cespedes, it might be a little streaky. I believe in Jackie Bradley. If you look at the numbers underneath his scores, this is a guy who added power to his game and went through a horrible slump and early in his career, and had the mental toughness to make it through it. This team is so well constructed, Greg. I have to just really tip my hat to you. You've been in the league now for several years. You've had some really tough luck. You never let it get you down, and you just continued. And I think your team reflects that. When I look at your team, that's what I see. This team can weather a bit. I mean, you'd have to have 5 injuries for it to really, I think, get in the way of you getting into the tournament.
Well, I think I definitely have an opportunity to make the playoffs, but honestly, I think my best team was 2 years ago, the one that lost seemingly every game by a point, but outscored everyone. I think that was my best team, and last year was my second best team. As I look at my major league roster, starters and reserves, I fully expect that in 2 years, 2/3 of those players will be gone. I really view this as my transition year. And will I enjoy and have fun with the possibility of making the playoffs? And I'm going to play that I have that chance. Yeah, but I fully anticipate. You're looking at my minors. You know, if my starting lineup right now today, I think that only three of the players in my starting lineup today will be on my lineup on opening day in 2019.
Wow.
So the rest will be either reserves or they'll be gone. They'll be trade bait, And I'm building. This is my. I mean, the Victor Martinez and Brad Miller and Napoli, and even like Matt Carpenter. Those guys. They're not going to be around for me in a year or two. So this is my. If it's June 15th and I'm not doing well, then Jack, you said you'd like to have Matt Carpenter. We could probably make that happen on right around the second, third week of June if things aren't going well. So.
And that, my friends, is the biggest line of bullshit I think I've heard. Like, look at this, man.
I'm looking at the roster and I'm saying this is if you truly feel that that's a transition team,
it is.
Then yeah, but if that's how you really feel about it, then you've got nothing to lose by making smart trades, which we know you can do. And just even adding and dropping players that might raise eyebrows and taking chances and playing the game of who's hot.
Honestly, I'm looking at 2019 to 2021, with Vladdy Jr. at third and, Senzel at DH and, Delvin Perez and Kevin Maitan, mark my words, are both going to be monsters. Those are my core youth, and then they'll have veterans like Springer and Aledmus Diaz maybe, and then the one veteran I'm going to cling to obviously is Posey till the wheels come off. So
well, you can just keep being enamored with those kids and keep thinking that's the way to go, and because you and I we play the last game of the year, so. I think it's going to be a big game. I think it could be a big game, and I think you're playing it perfectly for the public relations crowd there.
I want to know what did I get for David Dahl when I traded him to you, Tim?
Not enough.
I'm just looking at that going, gee, I've got Obi-Wan Herrera in there at my third outfield spot. David Dahl sounds a little better than that.
I think you definitely bemoaned the fact while you were trading him. You're like, I don't think I'm going to be happy about doing this. But
yeah.
And if you can't remember who you got, then that's probably a bad sign.
Oh, I never remember who I got to trade. Once they're off my team, they're dead to me.
So my sensei, my teacher, Jack, taught me that when you make a trade, that what you have to do is just forget about what you gave away and only focus on what you received. And you have to condition yourself for that. And there's only been a couple of times where that hasn't been the case. And the Mookie Betts trade was one of them. And
that's to me too. That sometimes it's just impossible.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to see the guy every night on Sports Center and in his first fucking year, and that's a little tough.
It's a tough one, and but it's one that when you talk about how to play this game and to keep your sanity, it really is. Human beings feel the pain of loss far greater than the happiness of gain, and so Jack taught me on a very early age, or early in my fantasy baseball age. And shit, we were a lot younger then, but to condition my thinking to counteract that, and it was a brilliant approach, and it got me through my fear of trading. And I made bad trades, and I had to deal with it and learn some lessons. But it's been something that for me has helped, and a tremendous amount. So
well, yeah, that's easy for you to say though, Tim. When you look at your starting lineup, that it's a starting lineup of everybody's most painful trade memory, probably. You know, there's so
No.
many guys.
Oh,
Nolan Arenado, for me, I still wake up at night screaming his name sometimes. So
that, I mean, he has to be good at it.
absolutely,
I,
yeah.
I have mixed
You know what,
emotions on
Tim?
Dude, Tim has the most amazing trade of all time. The most amazing trade of all time in any fantasy sports I've been in, because my brother does not trade. He's very difficult. As soon as you mention, my brother's the opposite of what Tim. As soon as you mention a trade, all he can think about is the potential in the guy that you're asking for. Not even how good he was, just the future possibility. It's all he can think about, and he can't trade because of it. This is the same guy that drafted Bryce Harper when he was fucking 16 years old, and didn't have a fucking driver's license, and Tim got him off my brother's team. I still don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if any weapons were involved, but that was the most impressive trade I've seen in this game.
My trading philosophy, you know, having never won the championship, I think about Branch Rickey. You know, when he was GM of the Pirates before he was the Brooklyn Dodgers GM, he traded away our only good player in Ralph Kiner. Had won like 3 straight home run championships. Was the only guy doing anything on those 1950s era Pirates. And when the press asked, you know, Branch Rickey, why the hell would you trade away Ralph Kiner? He's your only good player. And Branch Rickey said, you know what? We finished last with him. We can finish last without him.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, the reality is that to trade well, you have to benefit the other owner. Like I firmly believe that it's got to be a mutually beneficial trade, and that it makes each team better. And if that can be pulled off, then that's how it is. And I earnestly try that every single time.
That's how I just looked it up. That's how you got David Dahl. You traded me Bradley Zimmer and Orlando Arcia.
Right, which were two that still are two high prospects. That it starts with the prospects. He loads up he does his study in there. He figures it all out. He's hit on more prospects than any of us know, because most of them are spread throughout the league for the guys that he actually wanted off of each of our teams.
That's right.
But hey, it's a process, and he's got it down to an F in science at this point.
That's how I got Will Myers.
It's true, man. It's absolutely true, and it's honestly, it's Benigno philosophy. It's Jack Benigno philosophy. When you see me play, I am kneeling at the altar of Jack. I mean, that Jack is, back, 23 years ago. I know I said it was 30 or something, and Greg was like, "What the fuck?" But it was 23 years ago, and I kept having these beautiful teams with great baseball players, and I just sucked. I never won. And finally, Jack took pity on me and said, "Look, man, we're playing fantasy baseball, not real baseball. You draft great baseball teams, not great fantasy teams." And ever since then, I would get Jack at these weak moments where I'd just get him talking about, how'd you make that trade? Jack, I honestly didn't think you were going to talk about Bryce Harper. I thought you were going to talk about Grady Sizemore, and that trade that we almost broke the league with that trade, and that was Jack and me. And it's another episode. We'll get into that one, because that really articulates your philosophy and my philosophy and how we go about it. So, Greg, I'm going to give you the steering wheel here, and let's go through Jack's team.
Yeah.
Jack's Wax Packs.
Ooh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the reserves too.
Look at look at the injuries also.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I look at it, and at first blush, it's solid everywhere, with just some of the elite players. When you look at some of these the rankings that sports sites put out. They talk about the elite players, and that's who we're looking at. When you look like Goldschmidt, he's elite. Daniel Murphy, God bless him, he found another gear. I think that shows you more than anyone, and it's one of those truisms you always hear about in sports that some guys can do well to a certain extent in New York City, but some guys are just freed up when they leave that pressure cooker and that media, focus. And going to Washington seemed like the best thing ever for Daniel Murphy. Franco, the Phillies, they seem to operate so under the radar these last few years. After all their success, they're under the radar. But Macau Franco is just another really strong player. Healy is a backup or a prospect is strong. I thought Tim Anderson, your choice of Tim Anderson in the draft was really strong. But then you look at your players, LeMahieu, any guy who can swing a bat and plays in Coors Field is good to have on your team. Your outfield, Batista, I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. Turner, again, Washington's team looks really strong. Cabrera, you got to love him. And Justin, again, super solid. And I look at your bench, Gaddis as a DH option, or God forbid, he stays behind the dish and you can qualify him at catcher. That's great. And then you got another Rocky in the injury list, Ian Desmond, and so he's going to qualify ultimately in the outfield and at first, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because he's one of those examples that we talked about earlier, a player who's never played first but is starting the season as their designated starter, who I guess based on the Canseco rule would have immediate eligibility. And then Kipnis, I mean, just solid and deep. No weaknesses with some of the elite players at some positions. When you're talking about elite level first base and second base, those are to me the differentiators. There's a lot of good outfielders out there. And you have some of them for sure, but you have two of the elite positions that aren't deep in second and first, and so that's what scares me about your team.
This is a team that's built. You look at the players, you look at a Batista, you look at a Cabrera, you look at Goldschmidt, you look at Turner. I think Upton is going to have a better season this season. I think we're going to see a much better Justin Upton. I think Franco takes a step forward. Not too high on Murphy, but that could just be a lack of understanding about who he is. I like Ryan Healy. You saw what Ryan Healy did last year. That's an excellent backup at third base. You've got Marcelo Ozuna, who's continuing to grow, 27-year-old season. And I agree with you, Greg. Evan Gaddis there, he's qualifies at catcher. He's going to play catcher again. There's going to be a guy that goes down, and Gaddis is going to be – he's always in the top 5 in catchers. I mean, that was and whether he stays or whatever you get for him, you've got Russell Martin there too. So you've got some strength there. I think Desmond is going to be phenomenal in Colorado. Just phenomenal. The skill set just matches that thin air. And again, Kipnis, I agree with you that he's just a good, consistent player. And when you have a guy go down for 2 or 3 weeks, he's the perfect person to plug in.
Jack hinted that the Gaddis trade may be a temporary one in anticipation of something else. And as I was going through just now looking at his roster, that's what I thought to myself as wow. He's got a lot of assets there at catcher.
Yep.
That that's gonna that's a position of strength that he can deal to maybe pick up another outfielder or pick up to cover for an injury or for a draft pick next year for some young prospect.
Yep. You always hear Joe talk about cornering the market on a position and catcher continues to be you've got your Buster Posey and then you've got the rest. And
that's always been a strength of Jack's too.
Always, and it's a hard one to discount, right? You've got to really understand that position and the team and where that catcher is in that team. And That's going to be interesting. Maybe we'll be talking about it next week as to what Jack does with Gaddis, the Gaddis Chronicles.
I didn't say Gaddis was necessarily going anywhere.
Right, but I'm seeing.
Oh
Petcher.
yeah, okay,
Right,
good point.
yeah.
See, if you guys, the irony of that last little segment is 2 weeks ago I had Wellington Castillo and Tom Murphy was my backup, and which again, part-time in Colorado at catcher should be good enough to start in our league. I like Murphy a lot, long term, but so I just picked up Martin recently and now just picked up Gaddis. So I went from having what I thought was a huge weakness at catcher to now what seems like pretty good depth. The other irony is I had Franco and literally no backup third baseman. I had no other third baseman on my team, and I ran around freaking out, pissing all over myself, to the point where I was talking to my brother about David Wright and Jose Reyes, and then I realized that and it's weird because Ryan Healy has a special place. You guys. Like I said, we play in. I play in another league with some of the same people in our league, a few of us, and then some other people. Ryan Healy has now made the record books, as far as I can remember, because it's it's an 8-team league, and they're just less smart. And Ryan Healy has been in that league and wasn't in this one on a team. And that's the first time I can remember going into a season where somebody over there knew more than somebody over here. So those are my two big weaknesses going in. And then obviously, Justin Upton comes out the gate like he did last year, and I'm in trouble right away. I'll have to move him up. My original lineup had Turner at middle infield where LeMahieu was. And then Desmond would be in that spot at outfield, and I was very excited about that lineup. So we'll see.
I think you made a really smart pick during the draft, though, in Keon Broxton. That kid's got bat speed, and he's fast as hell. And you know what? I love, that's the beauty of having a player on a rebuilding team. They're going to let him play. And
right.
His rate stats may not be great. He might hit 240, but he could hit 31 home runs and steal 60 bases.
Yep, a little bit of everything. The funny thing that nobody's even mentioned, and honestly, me personally, and Mike, and generally, back in the day, and like I said, now that we got you guys in here, it's become a whole different situation because, back in the day, me, Tim, and Mike won a lot of championships. And so it's kind of like a joke that if one of us or the other one gives their approval on one of our players, then automatically they just have more clout to us. For instance, Barreto, me and Mike were talking about Barreto. He's like, man, that guy's going to be good. I'm not sure. Or, he maybe not, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, Tim offered me a trade for him the other day. He's like, oh, shit, really? So immediately, that guy had more value because Tim offered him. So the reason I bring that up is Mike actually is very high on this guy as well. Michael Brantley could change my whole season. That guy could come back and if he can stay healthy, can pick up where he was, where he left off on his way before the injury. And he could easily, I could easily see my entire starting outfield being different within a short while. Batista because of injury, Upton because he doesn't like cold, obviously, and Trey Turner would move to the middle infield at that point, and I could see myself starting a Brantley, Broxton, Desmond possibility. So who knows? You really never know. I will say that my staff rankings changed more this year over the last couple weeks than they ever have before. At one point, I was positive that Boston should go first and Chicago should go second. And for the longest time, I believed Cleveland should be third, and then from there I had Washington and the Mets. I like San Francisco a lot, so on and so forth. And then I sat down and did some statistical analysis that I'm not going to share with you, but Tim probably knows it. And in that particular statistical analysis, Washington came up number one, the Dodgers came up number two, and that was good enough for me to move the Dodgers a few hours before the draft from 8, which is where I picked, and I was happy with. Or I'm sorry, 8 was where I was picked, and I was freaking for them. Moved them up to 4th, so I had them 4th. The Dodgers ranked 4th going into the draft, and so obviously I was pretty happy to get them to slide down to me down there. Not that anybody above that doesn't have a good chance of being better than them, but in my mind, I was extremely happy with that pick.
I agree. I just can't draft American League pitching staffs. They face 11% of the lineup they face is a professional hitter
Right.
versus Tyler Glasnow. So
You're absolutely right. Yeah, National League, you get to pitch to pitchers.
yeah.
So, Joe, your World Series prediction? Which two teams are in the World Series?
We never did Chris's team, did we?
Shit. We did not, because we would have talked about
Kyle Schwarber and some others.
fuck. Well, it is 10:30 East Coast, and I'm gonna have to go.
I think we missed
Well, my prediction would be, just glancing at it the way you guys did and listening to all the things you're saying, I still see Jack and you as the top two teams.
Yeah, so I think it's Greg and Jack. That's my pick.
Well, it could go. I think it's going to come out of that division. That's for sure.
And that's interesting. I think it's Joe and Tim.
Nice. The interesting part about the way we have the division set up now, like I said, is it only one of us isn't making the playoffs. Me, Greg, and Tim. Like one of us is definitely not going to have a chance. So, which I like. I kind of like it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
2 years in, but so far so good. It did change my philosophy last year for sure. I was ready to start rebuilding last year, and maybe I should have. And then I realized what division I was in, and I was like, oh, well, shit, I'm in the playoffs. No offense to the other teams that were in my division, but I was pretty sure I was going to make a playoff run by before the season started. So now all of a sudden I started building up as opposed to dropping down. And as Tim said, I'm just not a very patient guy. That's why what you did, Greg, and just so impressive to me to be that patient, to be able to grab a guy and hang on to him that long and then see him blossom and develop. And I like to do it. It's fun. It usually happens for me either really fast. I just happen to get I drafted Trey Turner last year, and again maybe he's not. Maybe maybe he comes back to the ground and he's not as good as it seems. But it either happens very quick for me or just on accident. I just forget that I have a guy and then all of a sudden he's a stud in the major league. So I have a hard time. I just traded Barreto for Gaddis, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I like
God
the build.
bless you.
I like waiting. So my place in this division is definitely informing my thoughts on my strategy for the year, and the thought of building for 2019 and acknowledging that I'm in the Champions division for the first time. I'm gonna make some early definitive decisions to either push my chips into the all in this June, or say, you know what, I'm gonna make some strategic moves for the future.
Well, maybe we'll do a side one where we can get through Chris's team, because Chris's team definitely deserves to be gone through. It's an interesting team. I think he's got some good players on there that have underperformed for him in the past. But we've already got 2 hours of recording that I'm going to need to sift through.
I told you it'd take a while.
Yeah.
And Tim, just like we talked about in our initial meeting, maybe these team previews, maybe we don't do them all in week 1 of the episode. Maybe it's
three or four. Split it up over 2 weeks.
Yeah, like a narrative structure. Introduce them. When
do it by division.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. So by division.
Yeah, and honestly, this was more. My thought process was just more of a test to see kind of the back and forth and so on and so forth. And again,
listen, you and Greg consistently put out good thoughts, so we're not wasting that.
It's going to be good. This is fun, guys.
Yeah, and it'll evolve, right? So we have to let this play out. We have to understand how this works with the 4 of us. We have to understand as we listen to it, say, oh, that worked really well, or God, this didn't work that well, or I'm bored here, but man, this is freaking great. And it will, it'll tighten up. This is our real first jam, to use the analogy I brought up before. And I think there were some really good moments in it. And it has.
I promise I'll try and contribute more. I'm learning.
It's good stuff.
Hey, man,
I'm listening to you guys and learning stuff about you.
Joe, sometimes the bass player is invisible, but the band doesn't exist without the bass player. You know what I mean? So you hit the notes at the right moment. It's all that matters. No pressure. Enjoy yourself. Yeah. And bass players always get the chicks, man. So
I'm enjoying learning about what you guys think about with this stuff.
Well, we'll start pressing you too, motherfucker, because we know that you know stuff. And I call Greg on his bullshit, but you spew out a lot of bullshit too. And I think Jack nailed it. He's like, oh, he'll always tell you that he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't really. Jack nailed it. So we will definitely be exploring your methods as well, sir.
I think you're going to be disappointed.
I'll take that as a challenge. Listen, I love you guys. I appreciate you getting together on this. Over the next couple of days, I'll try to put something together with a little more polish, get it out to you. And the key to this is the hardcore feedback that, not worrying about, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or whatever. Just look, I think we should do this and I think we should do that. And let's start to really get in there and kind of, hammer this metal into place in a way that we're proud of and we're happy and we're having fun doing it. And I think one of the things I'll do is to kind of set up a kind of a set list or maybe a kind of a segments as to what we'll talk about and get it out earlier so that we can do it. I didn't do any preparation this time, obviously, and that was
that would be if we're gonna do a Wednesday thing and you have kind of a concept as to what segment 1, 2, and 3 may get that to us by Sunday, Monday, whatever would be helpful. I think I'll be impressed with what Joe and Greg will come up with a couple of days of preparation.
It'll be fun.
Me too, guys. All right,
gents, have a good evening.
You too.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
A couple days till opening day. I can't wait.
Woohoo!
Yep. Won't be long now.
Good luck, fellas.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
All right.